Today's conversation will be a great one. DEI, unconscious bias, self-reflection. You'll love the message our guest has to share. Let's get to this. Hello and welcome to the Elevated Voices channel. I'm your host, Ty Harrison, and we are continuing our series of conversations with real estate and real estate lending professionals regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion within our industries. We also discuss dynamics impacting homeownership rates among Black and Latino communities within the United States, and we draw attention to the people and the organizations that are working to improve the situation. Now, for introductions, again, my name is Ty Harrison. I work within SWBC's Financial Institutions Division, and I head up our Lending and Insurance Solutions Group headquartered here in San Antonio, Texas. I've been working with financial institutions in the areas of lending and insurance services for the last 18 years, and my organization includes our appraisal management company, our white label PNC insurance agency model, and our private market flood insurance program. Now, today we have with us Ms. Wanita Kaupert of SWBC's Financial Institution Group. Wanita, thank you for joining us.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's definitely great to have you here. I know you're very passionate about the topics we're going to discuss today. We're all very anxious to get started, so let's do this.
All right, let's go.
All right, so let me take a moment to formally introduce our guest. Wanita serves as the Executive Vice President of Product Management for SWBC's Financial Institution Group. She spent the first 10 years of her career in the mutual fund industry, where she managed various departments including tax, escheatment, fraud, and research. She joined SWBC in December of 2008 as a manager in the Mortgage and Bank Division, where she oversaw the administration of the Mortgage Lender-Placed Insurance Program. Over the years, she took on various roles and became an expert in risk management and point-of-sale products. Her passion is ensuring our clients feel valued, appreciated, and heard. Yeah, that sounds like the Wanita I know. Good stuff, good stuff. All right, so Wanita, I know you and your team manage a wide array of products and services for our financial institution clients. You guys work with banks, you work with servicers, loan servicers, you work with credit unions, obviously. Maybe we could start by talking a little bit about what you guys have been working on. Obviously, on our show, we typically talk about the mortgage industry and the real estate lending, and I know you touch a lot more than that. But just let us know, what have you been working on?
Yeah, so one of the things that's most exciting to me that we started last year and we're carrying over into this year is the concept of client advisory boards. So we actually started last year with income generation on our credit union side, and then on the mortgage servicer side, we started one there as well. And it's been really good just to have a platform where we can present our ideas and our concepts, and it really provides an opportunity to validate where we're headed and make sure we're headed in the right direction. They all have like real world experience, right? We have assumptions, and so we're able to grab that. The mortgage servicer has been really interesting because that's probably the one we feel like we have a lot of opportunity to continue to develop and grow in that area, and they've given us a lot of great insights. Some of the stuff I can't share with you today, but we are working on a couple of things based on the feedback that they gave us last year.
I actually participated in one of those, so thank you for inviting me to that. That was very insightful, bouncing those ideas off of the clients that were there, and you think you really got something, and you get that look like, nah, not so much, but then you get that one where the credit unions are like, that sounds good. It's really rewarding to have that kind of in-person interaction with them as you're going through those new ideas. So that's very good.
Sometimes it's the opposite of what you think, and it's
exactly.
great.
You just cross your fingers. Don't be the opposite. I can be off, but please don't be the opposite. And I think I hit them with one that was closer to the opposite of what they were thinking. So as we look at the last year and what we've been working on, one of the things that from our perspective that we've really seen is with the mortgage lending, everything that's happening in the economy and everything shifting with home equity lending. Again, with the Lending and Solutions Group, we support all those property valuations, and there's a shift to those non-traditional appraisal orders, those more automated, more technical, more data-centric solutions. And we've been lucky because we've introduced a product, our residential eval product, that has really worked well in the current market, where the AVMs, the automated valuation models, aren't as accurate, where they're pulling data, but there's not as much data to use because there aren't as many cells. But really, what we're really just seeing is this shift to really needing to modernize, right? Really needing to leverage the technology. And it sounds so cliche to say that, because when is it not time to modernize? When is it not time to improve your technology? But right now, as the economy is shifting, and you hear about the layoffs, the need for efficiency is there, and we've really seen that within our area. And just like you were saying, in those advisory board meetings, when you're able to provide those kind of enhancements, you can see that response, like, yes, you're talking our language. That's what we're looking for.
Yeah. I think the need to automate is just, it's always been there, but COVID also fast forwarded everything about 5 to 10 years, right? So we all got used to kind of that in-person service, and everybody really wanted that experience and felt like it was necessary. But then when we were pushed into an environment where digital was necessary and automation was necessary, and you were doing video, everybody started realizing, oh, we can achieve these things, and we can kind of normalize that. And it certainly made it interesting for people who own product, because you have to do a lot of work to stay ahead now, because everything did fast forward so quick.
That's a great point. I mean, you think about what COVID did to us, and like it forced us to test things, like things that as a company you might think are a great idea, but you need the market to test it, and maybe it's hard to do that in certain situations. Well, in that situation, we had to test these digital solutions, and that actually, it brings me to kind of this other thing that we've been doing, where historically, the Lending Solutions Group is all about streamlining the lending process. So it's all about integrating with platforms and bundling products and that kind of thing. But over this past year, we've been able to partner with a fintech to create a point-of-sale solution on the home equity side, so that more of our credit unions can have a more modern solution available for their members that do want to engage with them online. And to your point, coming out of COVID, everything changed. I mean, especially in the credit union, where the demographics are such that you still have a higher percentage of members that will come into a branch than, say, a bank or some other entity. Even in that environment, the shift towards digital is there. I mean, it was a big move. So now, again, streamlining is one thing, but increasing that home equity loan percentage in terms of market share for them, and helping them have a more modern solution, considering everything that's happened, has been key for us. So I don't know, right on point, and as I would expect you to be, Miss Product over here, at the center of everything that we do on product. I kind of want to bring this out. I didn't say it in your overview, but there's so much more that you guys do. I'd have been talking all day if I tried to say everything that you and your team do for our company. But I think about your role and what you do, and you guys are in the center of our largest technical projects within our division, which are often the largest technical projects within the whole company. You personally are touching our largest clients that we have, very, very large companies that we work with. I know you lead a team of individuals who are managing our international relationships with companies like Lloyd's of London and all of our various syndicates located in Europe. I look at you and I look at your team, and it's a very cool opportunity, a very cool role that you're in, and it's very important to me to bring people like you on the show so that others can see, how you can get into this world of real estate lending and mortgages and just real estate in general, and land in a role that you might not even know exists. So I basically want to say thank you for being you, thank you for being in your role, and I'm very excited about allowing this opportunity for our audience to get to meet you and get to know more about what you do.
I'm excited about it. Yeah, it's been a great role. It's been really rewarding. It is very diverse, and so that has really given me an opportunity to learn a lot over the past. I think I started in April of 2021 in this role, so we're coming on 2 years, and I've learned so much just because it is so diverse, and we do have domestic and we do have those overseas relationships, and seeing how all of these different individuals do business, even within our client segment. You mentioned banks, credit unions, mortgage servicers, they all have different needs. So it's a challenge, but it's allowed me to grow and stretch quite a bit over the last couple of years.
Well, you're rocking it, so keep rocking it.
That. Thank you.
Okay, Wanita, looks like we've got the perfect opportunity to kind of transition into the first question I have for you. So first, as you know, I'm on a mission to expose more students and more young business professionals to these different opportunities within the real estate lending, mortgage space. And I look at someone like you and in the position that you're in, and I think it's a great opportunity to kind of show others, what some of these cool opportunities look like. Ultimately for me, bringing in a more diverse group of professionals into the real estate and real estate lending world could help us solve a lot of issues at the same time, to include the homeownership and wealth gaps, because there's some very lucrative, as you know, roles within these industries, and there's a lot of knowledge that needs to be gathered and gained by working in these industries. But with that, I want to kind of shift and just kind of talk about how you got to this situation where you're in. Could you tell us how you found your way into this line of work? Maybe you were one of those lucky people who, at an early age, knew this is what I want to do. I know it wasn't me. It definitely wasn't. It was not my situation. But I don't know. Just let us know. How did you find your way into this?
It's actually kind of a unique story. You know, I'm the last of 9 kiddos. I'm a Hispanic female, old Roman Catholic. You know, lots of kids, and so I had a really great family dynamic growing up. My parents were both really hard workers, but they certainly were more blue collar.
Okay.
They taught me a lot of really great things. But as far as exposure, I was really kind of limited, and so I had if you would have asked me when I was 18 years old, would I end up here working for SWBC as an executive, I would have been like, what is that, right?
Yep, me too.
You know, I was like, I'm going to go to school and be a volleyball coach and a teacher because that's what I knew. I was good at volleyball and I love math, and so I thought, well, that could be a fit.
Fits, yep.
But I was kind of limited to what I was exposed to, right? Well, I had an aunt, Stella Lopez Morero, who worked for a mutual fund company, American Funds, back in the 90s. She was an executive. She's retired now and living her best life. But she, you know, all the cousins would kind of see her, and she was always traveling and going off and doing these amazing things. And so she, without even knowing it, she was kind of painting a picture for us, like, this is what's possible in life, right? And I love my background where it has made me who I am today, but I think the biggest vacation experience I had was New Mexico, and I was going to watch a cousin graduate, right?
Mine was Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas. That was my vacation of my childhood.
That's the biggest thing I ever did, right? I had a great childhood, don't get me wrong, but I wasn't just exposed to a lot of things, right? And so when their competitor was coming into town, she reached out to my twin and I and said, hey, the competitor's coming in, there's going to be an opportunity for you, the two of you potentially. I know the HR person. If you want an interview, I'll get one for you. And so, you know, we at school full-time at that point, working full-time at Chick-fil-A and just kind of doing our thing. And so we both talked about it. We did everything together. So we both talked about it. I'm like, yeah, let's try this. Let's do it, right? She ended up in the processing side. I ended up in the call center side. And really just a call center rep answering phones. I think I was making $18,000 a year in 2000. It was like the year 2000. Yeah,
and celebrating.
I'm killing it over here, right? But you know, I always caught on to things very quickly. I was really naturally a leader, even at Chick-fil-A. I think I was a team leader and I was a trainer. I did the onboarding for new employees, and so. I quickly found my way through that company, starting on the phones. A year later, I'm doing something harder and harder. By the time I left, I think I was 10 years in, I was managing tax, escheatment, fraud. I'm thinking, little old me who had no exposure to anything. I had this opportunity to do all these really great things.
That's very cool.
I worked for some great leaders, learned a lot along the way, and really had started progressing my career about that point. A friend of mine who worked at SWBC kind of saw what I was doing over there, and really he didn't have any exposure into what I was doing, just saw how quickly I was moving up, and so he said, come over here, and he tried to recruit me for years.
Smart man.
Then you fast forwarded to 2008, the market tanks, I'm in mutual funds, everybody's bonuses get cut, and I thought, this is for the birds, I got to go find something a little more diverse. One of the things I love about SWBC, our product lines are very diverse, which means we do really well when the markets are great, but we also do well when the markets are down. I think they did a really great job creating that dynamic here, and that really appealed to me. So I joined the company in 2008, started working in the mortgage and bank group, and kind of did the same thing here. Just started as a manager in a group and just kept trying to learn and stretch and grow. I did have an interesting little break that brought me to where I am today. I'm a special needs mom as well. I think you know that about me. And I took 7 years off to really just kind of
and
focus
came back.
on him. I did.
Wow.
I did. I took 7 years to just really focus on him and kind of help him. Had a couple more kids along the way. And when the last one started kindergarten, I thought, okay, it's time to come back and do my thing. So I came back in 2018. Again, as a manager of a group, and I figured if I'm here, I might as well be all in. And so I just started immersing myself and taking anything I could and really just learning as much as I could. Mark Hine gave me the opportunity to apply for the job I'm in now in 2021 in April. And I was lucky enough to earn the position. And so I've really been just immersing myself in product management. So my entire career was really about administration and operation of things that a company had stood up, right, and onboarding clients and things like that.
Yeah.
This has been totally different.
Yeah.
But it's kind of my MO to just immerse myself. And so I just started reading everything I could, listening to podcasts, just trying to gain as much knowledge, picked your brain.
I've seen your work. You're gathering information everywhere you can. And I want to say one thing, it wasn't luck. You're that good. So it wasn't luck. We were hoping you would take that role, and thank God you applied for it. So one thing you said, first, incredible story. And I'm cheating. I knew a little bit about that. But that's a great story. I want to make sure our audience had a chance to know that about you. But one thing you were saying about the access to information, as you were saying that, I can relate so much to that part of your story. Like, so for me, growing up in Northeast Texas, a little country town, Sulphur Springs, Texas, there was so little information, so little exposure. It almost felt like not having information and having lack of exposure was like a defining characteristic of being where I was from. It was that significant. And so I had the opportunity to go to college, and like everyone else, I'm trying to figure out what do I want to do. And I choose pre-med, right? And everybody's all impressed because he's pre-med. He wants to go pre-med, and I go to Notre Dame, and I'm pre-med. Yeah. And I've told people this over and over and over the years. Like, I did not know all I knew was that I wanted to be successful. That's all I wanted to know. Like so many kids, all I knew is I want to be successful. And when I looked around in my little town, there were these very well-off ranchers. And there were the doctors. Yeah. And that's what I saw. There were the doctors at the hospital, and there were these ranchers that had these gigantic ranches that were obviously doing very well. And growing up, my dad had a farm, and I worked on our farm, and I knew we weren't rich. So I chose, I don't want to be a farmer. So I chose, let's see what this doctor thing is all about. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about this later, but having that exposure to that information and just knowing more about what your opportunities are is such a big deal, and doing more to make sure that kids and our youth see that is critical. Yeah, it's a passion of mine, just knowing where I came from. And I would have really loved being a volleyball coach and a math teacher, probably far less stress than I have now. But, that I was limited by what I had been exposed to. And so I understand that a lot of kids are the same way. Even kids who are going out to college, like a perfect example of yours, they're leaving high school and going straight to college, and you're focused on what you know, right? And so if you take the time to really expose the youth to, here's all the options, here's what it takes to run a company, here's all the different opportunities that are out there, then chances are they'll pick something that lines up a little bit more with what will make them happy long term, right? Absolutely. And not have to worry about switching in the middle of their... Exactly. It's one thing to be switching in college, but once you get out here, you want to try to figure out where you're going sooner. So I'm with you. Great story, incredible story. And again, all of us that are at SWBC, especially those of us in our division, very, very thankful and grateful that you are doing what you're doing. So appreciative of the energy you bring. I've seen you do, and you're relentless. You're not backing off, and you're gonna help make sure that the things that you don't like get to where they need to be. So keep it up. We're all benefiting from it, and we'll all keep clapping for you as you do your thing. Okay, Wanita, I'd like to shift gears a little bit. I'd like to touch on a topic that came up with you in a conversation that we had a few weeks ago. And we were just kind of talking about our careers and how we, where we were and just different things that were coming up. And we were even touching on some DEI kind of initiatives and those kind of things. And I remember, I'm talking about diversity, inclusion, some things that we're trying to accomplish. And you were emphasizing how critical it was to focus on equity. Yeah. And I just remember in that conversation, it just kind of struck me, like what you were saying and how, like, admittedly, I hadn't really done that. Like, it was almost embarrassing. Like, God, I'm trying to focus on this. I want to be a part of the change. I want to help, but I am missing something. So for me, even with this show, like I'm trying to expose people to opportunity, help them see themselves in the people that we bring in on the show, help bring more people into this business line so we can have a more wide range of thought going into the problem solving. But yet, I am not talking about equity. So with that, I just want to kind of maybe, if you could, just kind of tell us a little bit about what equity means to you and what you've seen in your career and certain things that you might have tried to address as you've come across these issues with equity. Yeah. So, a lot of people get equity and equality kind of mixed up, right? Equity is more about, I saw a picture the other day that showed 3 people trying to look over a fence, right? And all different heights.
And so equality was to give everybody the same box. Equity was give them a box based on how tall they are so they can all ultimately see over the fence and watch this baseball game, right? So there's a difference between equity and equality, and how uncomfortable but how important it is for people to understand that we do not all start from the same place.
Absolutely.
And because we don't start from the same place, there are groups and individuals who have fewer opportunities, which means when they're further along in their career, that kind of just continues to build on it, right? And they have fewer and fewer opportunities than the person sitting next to them. And it's easy to think, oh, well, we all have the same, we all ended up here, we all have the same opportunity. But usually there was somebody along the way that kind of helped build that additional box so that you could see over that fence and understand, hey, you got a late start. Let me help push you up a little bit. And so I think that's one of the things that's important for people to understand. There's a difference between equity and equality. And then as individuals who have had the opportunity, have had those individuals kind of lift us up and help us get us to where we are. And it takes a lot of hard work. Obviously, I'm not, I did everything I need to do to get to this position today, but there are people along the way that gave me certain opportunities that maybe other people wouldn't have. And whether it was conscious or unconscious, that opportunity they gave me allowed me to continue to grow, because I did start a little bit further out than some of my peers, further behind, right? We grew up very, we didn't really see ourselves as poor because that wasn't my parents. That's not how their mindset worked. But we didn't have a lot. We didn't have a lot growing up, and we kind of had to just make our own way and pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. And I'm thankful that all 9 of us found a different way to do that, right? It's just amazing. And a lot of that had to do with our parents kind of building those initial building blocks.
Kudos to those parents. Those parents did a great job.
You, my mom's the reason I know I can do anything. She was a plumber, an electrician. She was a mechanic. She was a seamstress. She did everything. There was nothing she couldn't do. So I'm not allowed to say can't. She's like, just go figure it out and do it. But there's other individuals along the way that have an advantage in a position, and they see that, and they see you have potential, and they help kind of lift you up and get you there, right? And so the equity, when we talk about the youth and giving them an opportunity, that's where, when I started, because I have the privilege of participating in DEI here at SWBC, and when I started, I thought, I do not want this to be lip service. It needs to be real. Equity was one of the things that really stuck with me, understanding how my own story and how I got to where I was. And so I said, what's something actionable we could do to actually help create a little bit more equity? So I know I talked to you a little bit about what Janet Lorio, another EVP of our division, is working on. She, what her and I are working on right now is working through a district here in San Antonio, and we're going to participate in their work program. That's pretty common for companies to do, but we're going to take it a step further and really try to immerse them in the SWBC culture so they can see marketing, they can see accounting, they can see, the mailroom, they can see the call center work, they can see product and training and all these different. It takes a lot to make a company run, right?
Exactly.
And exposing them to all those things, understanding they haven't been exposed to it yet. And hopefully if we get them in their sophomore, junior year, they're able to see, oh, there's opportunity for me. Like, look at these individuals, and kind of help paint that picture and help push them along, because that is part of again, equity is not starting from the same place and just not even knowing what's out there and what's available. That's one piece, right? The other piece, I think, as leaders, is it's important for us, and it doesn't matter what level you're leading at. If you think about equity too big, it could be overwhelming, right? So I always say, just impact what you can, like change what you can. If you have a small team, one of the things that I'll do, the first thing I do when I take on a new group is look at the group and say, okay, where's everybody at? How are they performing? What does their pay look like? I'm a big proponent of not on my watch, right? So if I inherit something that I feel like there's a disparity in pay or something along those lines, I will work to correct that actively, right? Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get that person all the way through, but I will proactively do that, feeling like it's my responsibility to really understand that these individuals could have been impacted by their progression in their career, and how can I help them, right? You see somebody thriving and they're a big part of the team, but their pay is not there. Then you ask yourself why, and then you do what you need to do to kind of fix it. And there's multiple things that impact it, right? A lot of people think about race or gender, but there's also socioeconomic that impacts the equity of an individual, right, and their ability to kind of progress their career. And so I try to look at it broad and just make sure I'm doing what I can to affect change at my level, right? And I've done that at every single leadership level I've been in. So that's one of the things I think as leaders, we should be more proactive. It's uncomfortable, but it's the right thing to do. And I think another important part is not to assume the person you inherited from intentionally did it, right? Sometimes things are
Exactly,
subconscious, or they inherited and they just didn't have the foresight to do the same thing, right?
Exactly.
But once you see it and once you do it, then you feel like, okay, that's part of my responsibility as a leader, to help bring those individuals up, make sure I'm championing them, understand there's certain people in that group, they may not have had the same advantages, and maybe they need a little bit more of my help to push and progress their career on.
Absolutely. I remember when you were kind of telling me some of that stuff, and like I said, it was almost embarrassing because like you, I've been here for a while. I've inherited groups, and my teams have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and every time there's a new challenge. Like every time you do it, you're trying to streamline, you're trying to cut costs, you're trying to figure out, there was a reason why that came to you, right?
Yeah.
And, every time I've done that, yes, I'm trying to find the people who need to be promoted. Yes, I want to find those talented folks that I don't feel like we're showing our appreciation the way we should, because I need those people to stay with us. I need them to help us improve. I need to put them in a new position where they can lead improvement. But never, I hate to admit that, never did I just really look at that position by position and try to figure out if there was some equity issue.
Yeah.
It was more of, are you being paid, what I think you should be paid in terms of your value, but it was never, okay, let's start from scratch and see where do they actually sit today, and is that even right?
Yeah.
Right, is that even right? And I don't know, after talking to you, it definitely gave me an opportunity to kind of put that information and that message into my team and to say, let's make sure that we're doing this right.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at everything, and in addition to the promotions and the merit increases and all the different things that you're doing going into the new year, let's take a moment and just kind of look at, where people really are and if that's where they should be and if things are equitable. So I want to thank you for that. Again, I know when you came into your new position, I was one of those people you would say, hey, you got any advice for me? And all I had was, go do you. You're great at this. Do your thing. Be confident. Do you. But I want to thank you for giving me that information, because it's definitely something I took to my team and looked for as we were reviewing the numbers to see if there was something that we could do to make it a little bit more equitable. So thank you for that. All right. So this next one is a really good one and is another very inspiring one from our previous conversations. But I want to talk about unconscious bias.
Yeah.
Unconscious bias. So in my world of appraisal management, unconscious bias is obviously a very big thing. And it comes into play with appraisers doing property valuations and doing appraisals. And there's this subconscious whatever impact that sometimes impacts property values. And it's a very popular and common topic that kind of find yourself talking about in that business. But it's because it's very real, and it's been out there for a very long time, and it's had a huge impact on the entire business. But from you, when we were talking, you had a unique perspective of unconscious bias and how unconscious bias has been this thing that you've tried to wrap your head around from a very different angle, and I thought it was very insightful, some of the information you shared with me. So with that, is there anything you can share about your journey as you've worked to better understand unconscious bias and things that we can do to address it?
Yeah, it's one of those things we talk about being uncomfortable. Nobody wants to admit that they have an unconscious bias, but we all do. I think we've talked about how it's a part of your, it's your human nature, it's your genetics, it's fight or flight, right? So you're assessing situations constantly, right, in a split second to make sure, is this safe, am I comfortable? And it's natural, right? We all have them, and we use it all day long. I mean, we live in our subconscious. Think about driving to work.
Exactly.
You don't even know sometimes how you get there because you were thinking about so many things, but your body's on autopilot, right? I've always been aware of the idea of unconscious bias. As a Hispanic female, there's certain things that you just kind of grow up with knowing, and you navigate the world around those things, right? But it wasn't really till I had my son, who's 15 now, and he's nonverbal, he has autism, that it really opened up my eyes to a different way to really think about unconscious bias, because I feel like it's something more people can relate to, right? We don't want to admit it, but we have them, right? Even with my son and his peer group. Sometimes I would make assumptions about, well, if he can't speak, then maybe his intelligence is limited, right? I remember, this is a little bit further on, back in my career before I even knew about really all of this kind of stuff. I worked with an auditor who was in a wheelchair. And so you make all these assumptions about, his life must be limited, right? And he was like I don't even know what they do to grade scuba divers, but he swam with sharks, like great white sharks. And so he starts telling us all this stuff. And I'm like, well, your life is way more exciting than mine, right? But it's just unconscious. You have this thing in the back of your mind, all these limitations you place on people all day long. And Luke really, his world exposed that to me, because I thought, man, even as a parent, I'm placing limitations on my son. And it was unconscious. It was just, this is my limited view into what the disabled community looks like, right? And so as he grew older and I really delved into that world, I realized how many of those kiddos are impacted by just everyday people placing their limitations on them. And so I learned the importance of really in that role becoming a voice for those who don't have one and being an advocate for individuals, which has helped me in my DEI world as well. But when you start looking at it in those kind of terms, I think it's easier for people to understand, because people think unconscious bias and they automatically think, I don't have that. I'm not racist, right? Like nobody wants to think they're racist. That's a terrible term, right? And I think it's like, okay, you're not, but you have an unconscious bias about something. It's okay. Like just acknowledge. If you acknowledge it, then you can work through it. Just like I did with my son. It was like, I had to acknowledge, like, oh man, I felt like a really crummy parent, but I realized I was putting limitations on him, and I had to proactively understand that and remove that, and so that we could move forward and I could help him become the best version of himself. So that really kind of changed my view into unconscious bias. Another one example I like to use is, we all have individuals that we work with at work that you may not know it, but they're high functioning autism. 5 years ago they would call it Asperger's, but you can't call it that anymore. But high functioning in the workplace, contributing, right? But they might have a hard time giving you eye contact. As individuals, we assume eye contact means trustworthiness. So if you don't look me in the eye, then I can't trust you, right? When you have an individual that may be an amazing contributor and can do all kinds of things for your group, but you've unconsciously already decided, there's something shady, I can't trust that individual. And the individual just struggles to give eye contact, right? That's a great example of just be aware that there's individuals out there that we think differently, we function differently, we may act differently, we may look differently. All those things, it's important to really try to understand it and kind of immerse yourself in other people's worlds, so you really can get to the point where you can break that down. Absolutely. It's uncomfortable, but we all have them. And so I found that when I started communicating with people in this DEI world, I really embraced my son and his world, because I felt like that was easier for people to understand. Like, oh yeah, I do have that. I'm walking at a grocery store and I see a kiddo that is disabled. I'm putting limitations on them automatically. And that's something I can proactively work to overcome, right? Some of the other stuff is more difficult. People don't like to admit they might have it with gender or race or even socioeconomic background. People get labels placed on them because they didn't grow up with money, right? It's like, we all have them. They're unconscious. Work to understand it, acknowledge it, and we can really work to make. It sounds corny, but you can work to make the world a better place just doing that.
It sounds wonderful. I think it's a wonderful message. So real, so true, so authentic, so sincere. Especially in a world today where everything is so hypersensitive and everybody's so quickly defensive about anything, and like you said, trying to say, well, I'm not this and I'm not that. To start with yourself, to recognize this in yourself, and to try to work from there. Even in our world with the appraisers, where you're saying, okay, an appraiser goes into a neighborhood and he or she looks around the neighborhood and gets some general opinion of what the neighborhood is and what that does to the value, and their perception of something in that neighborhood might be a lot worse than someone else's perception of whatever that is in the neighborhood, without going into detail what that is, whatever that is. It's so easy for a person to hear that story and just start to kind of blame that person. But, to your point, if you can take a step back and just recognize where you might be, it might not be in that same situation, but you're doing it too. You have that. You have that. I don't know, what a wonderful message. If you really want things to improve, start with yourself, recognize this in yourself, and start from there. So
it's so hard, I remember the first time, I think it was an article you posted on LinkedIn about appraisal. And I didn't want to believe it, because you don't want to believe it. You want to think, man, we live in a better world than that. No way. That individual got a lower appraisal on their house because they had their family pictures up and they happen to be black. That's an uncomfortable thing to agree with. You're like, no, please, no. And then I stepped back and I was like, well, yeah, I could see. Sadly, I could see that, right? And then there was facts where they, did studies and showed, okay, if we changed the pictures on the wall or took them off altogether, the appraisal was higher, right? And that's part of unconscious bias, and I think understanding it and just embracing it, that exists on a whole bunch of different levels. It doesn't have to be always that extreme, but it exists, and let's just do what we can within ourselves to help address that. And if you have kids, you help them to be better and understand that and kind of address that. But it's uncomfortable. You don't want to acknowledge it, but it's there. Not acknowledging it doesn't make it go away. It actually makes it worse. So
exactly, it makes it worse. I don't know. Wonderful information, so insightful. We have to do this again. I'm about to call you back. I'm enjoying this too much. There's too much we can talk about. But okay, Wanita, you're almost out of here. But before we let you go, we would love to know if there are any organizations, any events that you think our audience should know about. Any organizations for people who are passionate about the topics that we're talking about, things that they should look into to maybe get involved with.
So a couple of things I'd say, if you're passionate like me about equity, I think get involved in your local community, right? There are a lot of these school districts, especially those that are serving like a disadvantaged population, they have mentorship programs and stuff. So you don't have to affect change on a big scale. Pick one or two kids and really show them the opportunities that they could potentially have just by exposing them to you and what you're doing in your career, right? So I think that's really big, just affect change individually. But there are a lot of other organizations out there that really touch on the concept of equity. So here in San Antonio, there's I'm going to read it so I don't get it wrong, the Kronkowski Charitable Foundation. They're kind of leading the way in two different areas. One is Second Chance, which is a totally different conversation that we could have at a later date. The other one is tied to the disabled community, right? And the whole concept is getting these two groups gainful employment in their community so they can be a productive part and really contribute, because they have things to contribute, but they're limited by people's unconscious bias about some of their experiences in life, whether it's a disability or maybe something that led them to being in that second chance population. So that's another organization that I would highly recommend. If you're in the San Antonio area, go check it out, because there's a lot of things you can do. Either donate, just bring them into your organization and let them talk about what they're doing and see if maybe that could be a fit for the organization. And just exposing yourself to what they're doing over there, I think helps you as a better leader, become a better leader.
100% agreed. Well, we're going to make sure we post information about that on the channel, so make sure people know those things. And you said a little something. There's a little thing we could come back second chance and talk about. Well, hey, I'm taking that as a commitment that you're going to be back here, and we're going to talk about some of these other things. I know you've got so many things you're passionate about, very good things that you're trying to make happen. So we're going to hopefully get you back on the show, and we're going to continue this conversation with you. So just want to thank you for being here. It's been a great conversation, and I'm sure our audience is really going to appreciate the information.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate y'all's time, and I appreciate you having me here.
All right. Thank you, Wanita.
Thank you.
Okay. As always, I want to thank you all for joining us today. We will be back with another guest, and we will continue this conversation. We look forward to learning more, sharing more, and doing more with all of you. See you again soon. Thanks for being here. Hey, thank you guys for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. More videos are on the way.